This year, On Purpose Adventures celebrates 15 years in business. And that got me feeling a little nostalgia right in the feels, right? And so I felt it kind of fitting. I haven't been doing videos like this or been much of a presence personally in the brand for quite some time. And I feel that this is a good time to reach out and share the stories of 15 years of adventures and from what it's like for business ownership, share some of the background behind the scenes of what went into planning an event, and some of the major things that we learned. And occasionally I'm going to throw up the testimonials we got, or I'm just going to describe a certain video or a certain experience and what we gained from it, what it led to, what the idea of business ownership has meant for me, my family, and going on from that. So above us, you can see a post I made, 10 years ago. So if we're doing that 2016 trend, here is something I posted 10 years ago, but it actually represents something that happened 5 years prior to that. Okay. So basically, let's paint the story on the history of how business started. In some of my socials, I have the abbreviations or initials behind my name of HSG. I am a high school graduate, even though it says I went to Clemson. So I am a college dropout. Industrial engineering is where I went, or what I studied, and I co-opted in the automotive world for a while. Realized through some stories, which would be a whole other video, that corporate political stuff directly was not for me, and left and helped a buddy with a startup that brought me to Charleston. Through the course of the next decade, being with a couple other companies that had some flexibility, I ended up wanting to go out on my own, start some adventures, get paid to play. And there's been a major transition from how the business initially started to what we are now. So going to give you hopefully maybe some hope, some ideas that what you end up doing is not what you start out doing, and finding that intersection of passion versus things you're good at, which is a big thing. All right. So basically, I left a sales job that I had. It was an inside sales job for a trucking company. And for 2 years, I was told if I got to $300,000 a month in revenue, I would start getting commissions. Well, I got that number. And then for the next 6 months, I even got that number to $350,000 a month in revenue for just my accounts. And for 6 months, they found every reason not to pay me. So at one point, I was in a mastermind. So, hey, their first nugget, I was with some other business owners talking about the situations, having a grounding board team, a sounding board team, and ended up putting in my notice. They asked me for a month notice instead of 2 weeks. And I was like, heck yeah, I don't have a plan, money, or anything. So yeah, a month's good, but at least we're on the same page. So within that time period, I really didn't have much of an idea, but I wanted to do some adventures, and I wanted to do, I thought, some signature type things where I would go out and plan trips. The idea of some bachelorette parties was there, and maybe get into the corporate side of things, but the low-hanging fruit was just go plan adventures, getting paid to play. Okay? Now, time comes, I leave my job, and I've got some free time on my hands because I have nothing lined up at the time. Except for one friend who wanted to do a night paintball. We'd done that socially. I'd planned that for friends. So I'd been planning events for people. So that's where the adventure event planning thing kind of started from. And so I had a moonlight paintball event planned because that group worked sun up to sundown in the summers. And I left my job. I started my new thing in July of 2011. Now, I also had been in sales, telephone sales, with a type of industry that as long as I get a hold of somebody, most companies would give us a shot for trucking based on our pricing, right? It wouldn't be based on any slick statements or things like that. As long as we can get a hold of them, explain how we handle certain situations, our pricing is what made the difference. It was a commodity at some point, but how we handle that customer service is how we maintain longer clients and whatnot. That's a different story. But I wanted to get back to the sales or the quick conversations, the thinking on your feet scenario. So I endeavored to be a what's called OPC, off-premises consultant. These are the guys that yell at you when you're walking through Charleston to get timeshares. I was not with a timeshare company. I was with a travel club, and from what I know, it was actually a very legit travel club. But point was, I wanted to be in an environment that forced me to have great conversations, quick conversations, maybe get a little about the sales tongue back. I actually had been classically trained in sales with Sandler Sales Institute with the former book publishing company I was with. And so I just wanted to have this back and forth, quick thing, every conversation being different, and get to that. Okay, which brings me to this first post there. One day out there, it was a holiday, I think, actually, and it was being asked on directions to Oak Steakhouse. Now, transparently, I had never been there. I just knew the general idea of it. Back then, there wasn't a thought that I could ever go to a restaurant like that. And I just tell him tell him the directions. Okay, it's make a right here, and it's going to be on that street. He didn't use any type of mapping system, etc. But what he did do, which is interesting, he owned a transportation company, and he asked some other questions, what I was doing. I said, well, I'm doing this right now, but actually I have an adventure event planning company, and I said it does adventure events for bachelor, bachelorette parties, signature events, and then corporate team building. He said, okay, great. And he's like, can I get your number or a card? And I was like, don't got a card yet. We're working on the website. Gave him literally a sheet of paper, gave him my phone number, gave him my personal email address. I had the domain at this point, but didn't have an actual email address other than my personal Gmail account that I'd been using for years. And I think it was about 6 weeks later, I get a call. And he said, hey, I've got a group of executives from Marriott coming to town. He does transportation. And what can we pitch them to do? And from that, I just started coming up with the idea of the backseat driver rickshaw scavenger hunt. And to this date, it's one of the most expensive per person items that I do. And that was the first thing I pitched. He said, great. They cut me a check. And, I think it was about 4 months later, we actually did the event. I don't remember the whole timeline, but it was the call, the confidence piece there. I had nothing from a business standpoint. That was the minimum viable thing. I just went forward with it all. And so, but that event was great. I went a little overboard on the prizes and different things and didn't turn a profit on it, even though it was so high, which I charged $125 per person. The majority of that went to the rickshaw and pedicab drivers. It was a 12-person group, so we had 6 drivers. From that, we learned a lot. Also, the rickshaw and pedicab drivers do not go past the crosstown connector. So if you're anything familiar with Charleston, it was a pretty far drive for them to meet at the Charleston Marriott, which is down in Lockwood, down by the Joe, the baseball stadium. And that's where they went to. And so I created the scavenger hunt that was non-traditional. It wasn't sequential. I didn't want them to go from one location to the next, but I wanted to give them some things that were strategic in mindset. So I created about 25 to 30 different clues to get to locations that varied from GPS coordinates. How are you going to figure that out? Well, Google Maps was the thing. You could type in the coordinates and figure that out. Anagrams. You could unscramble an anagram. It could be a phrase. Google was a thing. So they could figure things out. And then I gave them a physical map that they had to plot their course. So they had to take some time to figure out where they were going and then plot their course and then go back, send photos of each location once they were there. And then the team with the most correct locations and photos that matched got to win. So it was a fun experience. That effort that I created from that event has almost become the keystone of on-purpose adventures, at least scavenger hunts go. A lot of that started, and I ran with a version of that. It got tweaked along the way. So from 2011 to 2016, we used a version of that same paper analog scavenger hunt. 2016 is when our app came in. So, wow, there's a lot of 10-year usage, cool things here. But that's when we changed the app, which allowed us to change locations and everything really quickly. That'll be a whole other video. But I want you to take away from this that you can get started in business in a very messy way. You don't have to have it all figured out. I've learned that, or read something that, so many business plans, so many marketing plans are being created with AIs, but yet we don't have the corresponding business plan or business filings, like LLCs getting created. There's a lot of trying to find the perfect way to do things, but not the actual action. And transparently, I've actually been caught up in that, trying to find the best way to do things versus going back to my roots and just taking action. And that's been a big deal of what we've accomplished, is just taking the action. So anyways, this is the first of hopefully many stories that we'll be telling and sharing of our 15-year experience.